Hey everyone, I just want to take a quick sec to let you guys know that this is going to be a bit of a different video than what we've uploaded here in the past. This tournament was won during WCOOP, and I decided not to stream during WCOOP because I really wanted to focus on playing my A game during such a big series. So instead, we're going to do a review session by using GTO Wizard and reviewing all the interesting spots that we played in the entirety of this tournament. So big shout out to GTO Wizard for helping me out tremendously, and yeah, just really excited to bring you guys a video showing how we utilize GTO Wizard to help improve our own game and also get you guys involved as well here. So if you guys have any questions on any spots that we played, make sure you guys let us know here in the comments. And yeah, if you guys are interested in this kind of content in the future, please let us know. Again, this is going to be a bit of a longer video, but if this is something that you guys are interested in, let us know and we'll be able to bring you guys more of this stuff in here in the future. So yeah, let's get right into the video. So again, guys, if you do have questions, feel free to ask. Again, we are on no delay right now, so I'm catching everything live. So if you guys have any questions on some spots that we're looking at, feel free to ask. Again, I'm going to try to go through as many of these as I possibly can because we have 150 hands to check out. I don't know if we're going to finish all these today, but I am going to go through as many as I can. Obviously, spots that require a little bit more attention or a little bit more complicated, we'll get into the solvers and check those out. But also, if I happen to skip over a hand where you guys want to take a bit of a deeper dive, we can look it up. So again, feel free to stop me at any point. And yeah, let's get into it here. Again, we did max late reg this tournament too because it was on a Sunday during WCOOP, so we had a lot of tournaments going. So essentially any non-PKO tournament that's going on, I'm basically max late regging because of all the other PKOs going on and just trying not to have too many tables going when there's so much money on the line. So let's get into it. And for what it's worth, I will ask you guys what you want to do in certain spots. Some spots are a little bit trickier anyway. So we can get you guys involved here as well. So, yeah, I'll do that when we got more challenging spots, I suppose. This hand's actually, like, relatively close, I think, as to whether or not we just want to open jam here in EP. Again, with ICM, we do a little less open jamming from early positions. Overall, I think 12 bigs, we might be okay here. Anyway, we ended up ripping it in and end up getting pretty lucky versus ace queen. That's how you win tournaments. And Jack 10 here for about 22 bigs. I think this is going to be fine. We do have some open jams here for 20 bigs on the button. That part of the range is usually going to consist of like ace 7 through ace 10 offsuit, ace deuce or ace 5 suited, pocket 5s and under, and then like Jack 10 suited, Queen 10 suited, maybe even some 10-9 suited. So we do have a few hands that are actually open jamming here for 20. This hand's usually going to be the one that gets in there pretty consistently, I believe. We jam, get called, and run pure. Pocket jacks from EP, obviously getting in there. So we end up betting here. So this is kind of an interesting spot because we're going against a small blind instead of the big blind here. So if we were against a big blind, I would definitely pure c-bet this board. In general, when we're in early positions, we get to be a little bit more aggressive with our overall c-bet range, especially on like Broadway boards here. But that being said, again, we have to think about small blind's calling range. Small blind's going to be calling a lot of like suited ace X's here, pocket pairs, Jack 10 suiteds, Jack 9 suiteds, 10-9 suiteds, Queen Jacks, King Queen offs, stuff like that. So this board's actually like relatively good for villain. So I'm not sure how much I actually like this c-bet here. I'm probably going to get into this because this is a spot where I probably c-bet a little bit too high frequency, where we might actually have more of a checking frequency. Basically, I'm looking that we're opening from a really strong position here, and I'm just going to be betting aggressively overall. But I'm actually going to look this over after we go through this. I'm not very thrilled with this hand in general as a c-betting candidate. I prefer to be betting with the club than with and checking without. Now with the ace on the turn, I think we're just going to check back. Again, this hand is pretty close on the flop, whether or not it's a bet or a check. So if we bet on the flop, even though this turn is like relatively good, because it's less likely our opponent has an ace, we definitely just want to check this back. We have a pretty mediocre strength here. I don't think we get 3 streets from a 10 here anyway. So I don't mind checking this one back and either bluff catching or value betting ourselves on certain rivers. And this is certainly a river I think we have to throw out a value bet here. For what it's worth, I'm not sure if we're supposed to get to the river here with any ace X. Maybe like that's not specifically, maybe like ace 10 in the spot where we're pure trapping. But like, let's say for example, if we're opening like ace 3 suited, ace 5 suited, if we ever get to check those hands back for a little bit deeper, I think we might get some check back with those hands. But at more shallow stacks, I think we're just like piling in the money. But either way here, I think we definitely want to go for a bet, and we end up taking it down. Okay, this guy's all in for 8.5. We can't be folding almost anything for that price. And we're pure. Pretty loose jam from him with the ace-5 off. Make a little bit more sense from, like, if we were opening from button or cutoff, but I think that's probably a little too wide, ace-5 off. Ace-5 suited I think would be fine, but that's probably too wide. Coincidentally, he still had the best hand, but lucky for us, we run pure. Pocket nines here, I think we have a pretty clear rejam. I think it's kind of interesting to see what our worst pair that we're actually going with is here. So I think villain for 13.5 from the hijack. They're probably jamming down to like pocket fives. I think gets pretty close. So essentially us, I think we likely get to call. I think sixes gets pretty close for us. Sevens is probably making a decent amount of money. So yeah, I think this is a pure play here. And he has sixes here, so lucky for us. King 10, get it through. Ace Jack. Again for 30, I think we just do a lot of calling in this spot here. Our hand isn't strong enough to play for stacks, and it would be a pretty big disaster for us to actually have to 3-bet fold this hand, so we're just going to end up calling. What up, Dreezy? Life is good, sir. A little sore, but it's all right. Finally tackling this review I've been promising for so long, so. And we got a coffee at almost 4 o'clock at night. So, first a check here. I actually think villain gets to be like relatively aggressive on this board texture because of the positions here as well. But yeah, he ends up checking. I can't imagine this hand does a whole lot of betting. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets to do a little bit of stabbing here. But I think we're mostly going to check here anyway. I think if we want to start stabbing with ace-x, we probably want to start stabbing with, I guess, weaker ace-x's maybe. Either way, I think we're just going to basically check down as played. We take it down. So yeah, again, this is like kind of a reason, like if we're flatting like ace-5 suited here, which I'm not even sure if we're doing a lot of flatting with ace-5 suited in this spot. But if we did have ace-5 suited, I want to stab here a little bit more to potentially make like better ace-highs fold in this spot. And these hands just show down a little bit better. So yeah, exactly why I'm basically checking this one back. Pure ISO here for 22, it looks like. Jamming might not necessarily be the best play here. It might be okay. If it is, this is definitely like the strongest hand that we're jamming in this spot. I'm actually not too sold on this. This might be a little too aggro. This hand might be a little bit too good to just be like jamming like this. I do kind of want to check this one out though. I'd imagine we're around 25% of the field left. So villain's lipping here for 21. And yeah, this is going to be like pretty close. So villain strategy here for the small blind, doing a little bit of limping, some raising all in. And yeah, so again, I did say if we were jamming this hand, that it would definitely be the strongest hand that we jam. But this one's just ISOing for a non-all-in size. Again, I think that the jam might have been a little bit too aggressive here because this hand just like too strong to be just open jamming here. But we're too far off. I mean, we start open jamming here at ace-9, ace-8, and then some of the weaker ace-x's are doing a little bit. These in-between ones are usually playing a little bit more passively, basically. So yeah, I definitely messed this one up. I mean, just even seeing this right now, I thought that might have been a little too aggressive. But yeah, and then the suited variety usually just raises for the non-all-in size, because if we do get limp called, these hands are going to play a little bit better. A little bit more incentive to be just open jamming with the offsuit variety here and getting immediate folds from our opponent. All right, next hand, pocket tens. We are about 28 effective, and I think we're definitely going to play for stacks here. I think we make it around 5.5, 6 bigs here. And obviously calling versus jam. And we get unfortunate there. Lose a flip. Ace king, take it down. Ace 10, got to open here, take it down. Ace 10 again. So this is an interesting spot here. I'm not sure what I did. So this would be a good spot to ask you guys, what are you doing here? I would probably guess after that ace 9 hand that we're in the money here. Big blind looks like we're at like 700 right now, so we're probably in the money if I had to guess here. Okay, so yeah, what are you guys doing in this spot? We've got a low jack open here off 35, cutoff calls off 40, button calls off of 35, and we're in the big blind with 19 big blinds with ace set off. What are you guys doing here? Anyway, I'm going to assume that we jammed here. Again, there can still be some strong hands here. Beto says probably shoving, but there were some middle pairs that will call us. I mean, that's fine. There are some, but you know, we could he could call, and there's all like one person could call, and there's all this dead money in there, and then we're basically playing for like 2.5x our stack, and we're in a coin flip scenario. So a lot of these spots we can't be like afraid to get called. Like that's gonna happen. Sometimes we're gonna get called, and we're gonna be in a spot where we need to win flips. But that's just part of tournaments. Like yeah, it sucks when we get called, but again, you got to win some flips to win tournaments too. So we shouldn't really let that discourage us, I wouldn't say. For what it's worth, in terms of like ranges here, this guy can obviously have, you know, whatever. This range will still include some strong hands here. Like I don't think they're playing for stacks with like ace queen suited here. So probably best hands this guy's gonna have are like ace queen suited. Pocket tens might be really close, but I think pocket nines, ace queen suited will be in there quite a bit. But the thing is, once this guy calls, there's not going to be any traps in this guy's line here. Like he's basically going to be pure squeezing, like ace queen plus, pocket tens plus. So this range right here is relatively capped. So there's extra dead money out there with him as well. And again, this guy's going to have some strong hands, but not a ton. And then this guy could just kind of have whatever normal low jack opening range is here. So yeah, with all the dead money out there and this range being relatively capped, I think this is a pretty good spot to take it as a jam. Looks like we go for it and we get it through. Again, this is the range I'm least worried about here. This one can have some strong hands for sure. But this guy's not going to have a ton of hands that he can call with. Maybe he can like overcall here with pocket eights or like ace 10 suited maybe sometimes. But outside of that, there's just not going to be a ton of strong hands here. And with all the dead money out there, I think this seems like a pretty clear jam. Speaking of aces, versus a limp, this obviously does not exist. We're going to ISO here versus what we would assume is a weaker player. And we get called in 3 spots here somehow where ICM is really high. And I would think these like multi-way spots are really interesting here. Mainly because we want to be a little bit more cautious with our c-betting range because we're going up against 3 opponents instead of just 1. That being said, there's a ton of money in there. We unblock like pairs and a lot of draws here outside of like ace-high flush draws. So I think with all the money out there, and yeah, like aces is pretty good on this board, but there's a lot of turn cards that could be like, you know, either have us like behind in the hand or, you know, maybe we don't get action from certain hands we would. So I think with all the money out there and protection being like relatively valuable here, I think we're just going to bet small in this spot. Looks like that's what we do. And we get called by the recreational. And on the turn here, again, I do think this is kind of interesting, especially with the ace of spades. I don't think it would be like completely preposterous to see us check back here. I'm not exactly sure what I did. I would definitely prefer to check back here with the ace of spades than without it. Because like I would definitely want to bet with the ace of spades or check with the ace of spades, because when we don't have the ace of spades, it's more likely our opponent's going to continue with the flush draw, and we also need less protection versus like certain flush draws that villain may have, which obviously we block quite a bit with the ace of spades here ourselves. Versus a recreational, I wouldn't be surprised if we just make it like, you know, 4.5 bigs here. Usually, again, I think for like usually when I'm playing against recreationals, I just kind of pile in money with good hands, and that's what I think you guys should do. Like, don't worry about balancing your range and worrying about like which suits want to trap and which suits want to fast play against weaker players. When you have a good hand, just put the money in there usually. So hopefully that's what we end up doing here. Again, we make it 4.5 bigs. I like to see that for me. And Queen on the River is pretty interesting. I don't think there's going to be any like King 10s in there that's not specifically King 10 of spades, and that hand's also going to check raise a lot on the flop. So outside of like him having like 10-8 of hearts here that can't fold on the turn, I don't think we ever have the worst hand here. And he ends up jamming into us. We obviously call. No way we can be folding here. And he's got the Queen 10 offsuit. So it's pretty nice for us. What up, Waka? Yeah, it's been a minute since we had a study stream. Looking forward. Like I said, I've been talking about this for long enough, so I'm just happy to finally be doing it. And again, I do love the no delay streams. So interesting spot here. So villain in the small blind ends up 3-betting us. He's about 26 bigs effective. So yeah, here's another spot for you guys. What are you doing with ace queen here? We open in the hijack with ace queen. We're off about 51 bigs. We get 3-bet by the small blind off 26 bigs. What are you guys doing with ace queen here versus 3-bet? I'm gonna assume we end up jamming here. We'll take a look at this. Again, I think it gets like interesting what we do here with ace queen off and ace queen suited. I would imagine we just jam with like both in this spot here. Yeah, so I'm going to end up jamming here. We'll take a look at this anyway, and we get the fold through. I do, again, think this is pretty close. What I do think is interesting is, like, what our 4-bet bluffs are in this spot. And this is a lot of the spots that I've been studying here with GTO Wizard for quite a while now. Really understanding what the bottom of our 4-bet jamming range looks like. And then also understanding, like, what hands villain is 3-betting, because that's also going to help us figure out what hands we want to be 4-bet jamming in the spot. That's, you know, obviously ace queen, ace king, jacks plus. That part of the range is really easy to find, but the lower parts of our range that end up wanting to like 4-bet jam, I think, is where things get interesting. So let's do, we'll still be 25% here. So villain's got around 26. And we were in the hijack with quite a few. So this is going to be pretty accurate. So 50, 52, 27. It's going to be pretty accurate here, I think. They'll throw half a big blind less in there, but I don't think that'll affect our results here too much. And that brings us over to the hijack. And with ace queen, we are pure jamming here. Again, I guess this makes a little bit more sense with ace queen suited. These hands want to do a little bit more flatting. This hand's going to be indifferent to like jamming or calling. But again, I think the suited hands do a little bit more calling because these just play a little bit better post flop. Again, these are very consistent, like bottom of our range. We see the ace 5, ace 4, ace 3, all getting in there is 4-bet bluff jams. This king x suited block gets in there quite a bit too. Queen 10 suited is pretty interesting to me. I don't see this one getting in there a whole lot. And we do see with aces, we are trapping in position. This is pretty consistent here as well. I may have even folded king queen off in this spot, so I'm probably not getting in there with king queen off as much in this spot. Definitely not 4-bet jamming king queen, although that is like the lower frequency play. It's getting in there a little bit. Ace jack is also a pure play here. I don't know if I would have like full frequency played ace jack here between like calling and jamming here. So that would have been interesting to think about. But anyway, like pocket 8s plus, we're pure 4-bet jamming. 7s are a little bit indifferent. 6s, 5s, 4s are a little bit indifferent here as well. But yeah, pure jam with the ace queen, ace king suited, pure jamming here as well. And then we're starting to mix here with ace queen suited. So yeah, interesting spot. On to the next one. Pocket 3s versus 7 bigs. I don't think we can fold any pairs for that size. So we call and win. Very nice. So ace king versus 35 bigs or 36 big stack. I'm definitely gonna 3-bet here. And pretty dry board texture. The 4 and the 3 are relatively disconnected. I don't expect villain to have many of those hands at all. We also block villain's traps here as well. We block a lot of continues that they're gonna have. Like let's say a hand like ace 10 of clubs. Even like king queen of hearts that might float versus a small bet. We do block all that, so I think we're betting very high frequency in the spot anyway for a small size, but specifically with our suits, I'm never checking here. So we bet quarter pot here and take it down. King 10 suited here for about 33. This hand might actually get the mix. I would assume with a button we do a little bit more flatting with a hand like this, and then like if we're in the hijack, we might do a little bit more 3-betting. But yeah, closing out the action in position here. I think we probably do a lot of flatting. Would not be surprised to see if our hand actually gets in there. And versus squeeze jam for 28 bigs, we have a pretty clear fold. Best hand in poker, 10-8 of hearts down to the suit. Of course, we're going to open here. And 10-6-3. We probably do a fair amount of check on these boards. Again, multi-way, we're going to be a little bit more aggressive on the Broadway boards just because that's going to be the a bigger part of our opening range here as well. We also don't open here like with any like 2-pair combos. Like villain here in the big blind is going to have like 10-3 suited, 6-3 suited, 10-6 suited. Probably not 10-6 off, but villain probably has like more like strong hands in the spot. I would assume villain here is probably calling pocket 6s. Pocket 10s is likely 3-betting for 32, although I think it's close. Shouldn't really have pocket 3s in this spot, I don't think. Again, if this was like Chippy V land, pocket 3s would make a whole lot more sense. But in ICM land, these low pocket pairs are really like not super valuable until we get up to like, 35, 40 bigs plus. So I think we just do a lot of checking in the spot anyway. I'm assuming that's what I end up doing. And if I was going to bet a 10, this probably wouldn't be the one that I would bet. We want to be checking, I think, with our weaker 10x here and betting a little bit more with our stronger 10x. So ends up checking around. 6 is kind of interesting here. 6 is definitely going to be better for big blind's range. Big blind's going to have a lot of suited 6x's that I'm not going to have in my opening range, and certainly the cutoff is not going to be flatting a whole lot of 6x here too. So this card is probably very good for the big blind here, so I'm kind of okay with the probe here on the turn. Obviously our hand, I think, just wants to call. I don't think this hand is necessarily strong enough to put in more money here, like especially with one of our weaker 10x's. This guy could be betting better 10x than what we have here too. So yeah, we're just going to call here and reevaluate. Then the king on the river versus a check. I don't think we have another street of value here because essentially I don't know what our opponent's going to call us with. That's worth. Now, I mean, if he has like 10-7, 10-5 suited, we're obviously chopping with that now. with the king coming on the river. So I just don't think we have another straight of value here. So we're just going to show this one down. And he ends up giving up the deuce four of spades. Now, normally in these spots, like, spades are usually pretty bad bluff candidates. But usually the spades that bluff the most are the low spades here. So I would not be surprised, like, this guy would get to, like, bluff with, like, the low spades here. Let's say, for example, I think he wants to give up a little bit more with, like, let's say ace four of spades, like queen jack of spades, queen nine of spades. I think those hands want to give up a little bit more, and hands like this can actually do a little bit more bluffing. But I think the general consensus to most people is that we just don't bluff a lot with spades, which is like true at a lot of points. And we also have like bluffs with non-spade combos here, so he can still have like 4 or 5 of clubs here that can bluff. He can still have a hand like 7-5 that wants to bluff here as well. But outside of like those two combos, if he's not bluffing those hands, then he's really not going to have a whole lot of bluffs. Like, he's got 4-5 for the open ender, and then he's got like 7-5, 8-9, 7-8, 7-9, stuff like that. So unless he's just like pure bluffing those combos, he's really kind of stretching for bluffs. So I do think he probably gets a bluff with like lower spades here. So I think we get pretty lucky that we don't face a barrel here, because we would have been in a pretty tough spot on the river here anyway if we face a bet. Luckily, though, for us, nobody bluffs, and we're going to take it down with our 10-8 of hearts. 10-9 suited, pretty clear open here. Pretty good flop for 10-9. I think with a hand this strong, when we're only 25 effective, I think we want to use a small size here. Now, this is a board texture where we probably get to use like some bigger sizes here, but I think we mostly just want to use small sizes, especially opening as wide of a range as we are here. I think we just, and being as aggressive as we want to be here, I think the small sizes are going to be the most frequently used size. So we bet small and we get called. And then once we get to the turn, I think we basically want to set up the same size on the turn that we're going to end up betting on the river here. So I think somewhere around like 6 on the turn is going to be fine here. If we were a little bit deeper, we would definitely bet a bit on the bigger side. But with villain only having 20 bigs behind, I think somewhere around like 6, 6.5 is going to be fine here. We end up making it 6. Villain calls. Ace on the river. We're obviously still playing for stacks here. Now, can villain have a hand like ace 3 of diamonds? Sure. Can they have a hand like, I don't know, are they floating like ace 4 clubs here? Probably not. Probably have a little bit of like ace 9 suited in here at some frequency too. But outside of that, probably not too worried about this river card. Again, we block like ace 9 suited here. So yeah, a pretty clear jam for us here. And we do get called by a worse 9, which is probably fine here. Yeah, I guess, well, before I get into that, what do you guys think about his call down with a 9? That's actually a pretty good question. What do you guys think of this guy's call down with a 9 here? Are you guys calling 3 barrels with a 9 in the spot? All right. So, a couple of things going on here. Again, we're starting the hand at 25 big blinds. And usually when we get down, okay, you could have queen 10 or jack 10. Okay, so that's actually like the first point that I was going to make here. Is that when we bet small like this and we're at like 25 bigs, a big portion of our range when we have top pair here is supposed to be check raising. Essentially, when we're at like 25, 30 bigs here, especially when we are opening so wide, and ranges are really wide, like top pair is going to be really, really strong in this spot. So I think a lot of 10x facing this small bet size from a range that's opening so wide is going to be check raising here a lot. So I just don't think that we have a lot of 10x. Now, not to say that we don't have any 10x. I think we probably still have like our weakest 10x's, like 10 deuce suited, 10 4 suited, maybe like 10 7 off. Sometimes get to check call, but I think a big portion of our 10x is going to be check raising here on the flop. So that being said, a lot of villains like continue range on the turn is going to be either draws, 9x, and 3x here. So I think 10x is going to be pretty highly discounted from villain's range, although it probably gets in there a little bit. So once we get to the turn, knowing that, I don't think villain gets any fold around the 9x again, because 9x is going to be one of the strongest cards that he's going to have. Again, thinking that 10x, he's going to be check raising a lot on the flop. So essentially, like one pair 9x is going to be one of the strongest hands they have. So obviously not folding on the turn. And then once we get to the river, again, we do end up jamming, and he ends up calling with the king 9. So I did see an earlier comment saying that we have to call some 9x, but probably not king 9. I kind of disagree with that, because I think villains, like my give ups are mainly going to be king queens, king jacks, queen jacks, and then most of my bluffs are coming from like jack 8s, jack 7s, 8 7s, 7 6s. So essentially, villain probably doesn't want to block my bluffing range, which is essentially going to be, again, jack 8s, 8 7s, 8 6s, 7 6s, 6 5s, stuff like that. So I actually think the king is pretty good because the king blocks a lot of my give up range. So when he blocks my give up range, it's more likely when I triple barrel that I have a bluff here. So I actually think the king is a pretty good 9x combo to call with. So if we're going to be calling with 9x, I think I would be calling like king 9, queen 9, maybe 9-8. But I think, like, again, king 9s and queen 9s, even though their overall hand strength is going to be stronger than like 9-8, 9-7, I think the biggest thing is that with the king or the queen, that unblocks the bigger part of my give up range at this spot. So I actually think it's going to be one of the better 9x combos to end up calling down with. Now, we can look this up. Again, I could be completely off, but that's why it's good to make these assumptions before we actually check the spot. And then see if we can back up, you know, what our assumptions were with the solver. And then if we're wrong about it, let's figure out why we were wrong about it. So let's see. We got 10 of diamonds and a close 3 of hearts. So yeah, I said I would use mostly the smaller size here. Again, we have a 20% check frequency here, which is like pretty close to me. Just wanted to bet close to range in this spot. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, we're in ICM land and we have a really big stack. So in general, when we have a big stack, we want to be applying more pressure. So if I know we're mainly supposed to be betting in this spot and we have a lot of chips, I'm just going to close my eyes and bet because we want to be applying pressure as a bigger stack size here. So yeah, I would basically just pure c-bet this spot here. And again, I said I would normally use a smaller size, which is basically we're splitting between like 20% and 33% pot. 50% is getting there a little bit, but mainly we're using these smaller sizes here. We ended up betting for third pot. And again, what we were saying about villain's range, top pair, you can see, is only calling 60% of the time. And then the other 84% of the time, they're pure check raising. So again, what I was saying earlier is that the majority of the 10x that's going to just be calling here are going to be the weaker 10x's, which you can see here with the 10-5 suited, 10-4 suited, 10-2 suited, 10-6 off. Probably not, the villain doesn't have 10-5 off because of ICM here. But yeah, pretty consistent that the weaker 10s are going to be calling a little bit, but then the stronger 10s are basically pure check raising in this spot, which is pretty happy to see that, you know, I was backed up by that. And then second pair, basically pure check calling. So then on the turn, we had 4 diamonds. Villain's probably pure checking here. And then us on the turn. So these sizes aren't going to be quite as accurate because, again, it's not going to have the exact size that we wanted because it just gives us sizes that are already implemented in here, so we can't adjust this yet. I mean, I guess I could upgrade this to being able to upgrade to a size that we actually want to use. So again, I would use like a 2/3 pot size. They actually want to use 83%, but I think if we could throw something at like between like 2/3 here, it would probably choose that over the 83% size. I guess we'll choose this size because this is the one that gets used the most. And again, second pair does not get to do any folding here because, again, this is going to be one of the strongest hands you're going to have here. And now, again, going to top pair. If top pair did decide just check call on the flop, it's pure jamming on the turn here. So, yeah, so we essentially have no 10x once we get to the river here, which means we're probably going to have to do some calling when we have a 9 here. So anyway, villain ends up calling with a 9, and then river, ace of spades. I'd imagine villains just like pure checking here. They are. And we end up jamming here. And villain is pure calling here. Actually, well, what's going on here? So second pair, why isn't that coming up here? Oh, well, it's going to be third pair now. Okay, yeah. So again, the calls that are coming here the most are going to be, well, this is actually pretty interesting here. So I did say I would call king 9, queen 9 a whole lot more than like 9-7, 9-6, 9-5. You do see 9-5 is basically pure folding here. 9-6, 9-7 are basically a little bit indifferent to calling or folding, which is fine. Again, I would have thought that these hands would be calling a little bit more high frequency, and these hands would be folding a little bit more high frequency. Now, the fact that I see a lot of folding from the Queen X block here might be because we're pure like bluffing with essentially Queen Jack, Queen 8s. So let's go back and check that out. So when we have Queen Jack, no, Queen Jack's giving up here a lot. And when we have Queen 8, we're pure bluffing here. So yeah, not sure why the Queen X block wants to give up here so much. So yeah, I mean, either way, we're bluff catching with the 9 here a fair amount, basically because this is going to be one of the strongest hands that we have at this spot. We have no 10x when we get here, and then we only have a little bit of ace-x. Not two pair, top pair. So you see here, we only have an ace 2%, 2.5% of the time. So this is a very small portion of our range. So if ace X being such a small portion of our range, most of our value has to come from the 9X block because we never have 10X and we rarely have an ace here. So essentially the next strongest hand we're going to have is a 9 in this spot. So of course we're not like pure calling with 9X here because of the board texture, but we can't just be pure folding this block because we don't have many stronger hands than a 9 in this spot. Now, of course, 2 pairs are going to be really easy calls. River ace, suited ace X is going to be really easy calls. But we can't just be calling that. Otherwise, our opponent's just going to be able to close their eyes and just bluff like crazy. And then we're like way over folding. So yeah, I think this is like really interesting. Again, not 100% sure why the Queen X block is not calling so much. I thought this would have called a whole lot more. But again, you do see the Jack 9 calling a lot more here. So the Jack X, King X are calling a little bit more than 9-6, 9-5. 9-2 is also pure calling here. Again, I guess some like pocket 2s are supposed to be bluffing. I'm not going to get into that too much, but yeah, I did think the spot was really interesting anyway. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. For what it's worth, guys, BBZ and Lex just did a video that discusses defending versus aggression. And they went into a topic that was pretty similar to what we were just discussing, actually. Basically defending with hands that, like, maybe, in the first glance, it might not seem like we have a really strong hand in the spot. But when you kind of break down the ranges, you kind of see that this, like, a hand like this King 9 here is actually going to be one of the stronger hands we had. So I would actually like recommend that to you guys if you're struggling in spots like these. Lex and BBZ did a really good video on this on YouTube. You guys can check that out about defending like hands that kind of fall into this hand class actually, and how we want to break down which hands we start calling with and which hands we start calling with. All right, on to the next one. Blocking Queen Jack and King Queen. Yeah, I mean, again, I thought like we want to call a little bit more with Jack 9, King 9, Queen 9 because most of my give ups are coming from King Queen, King Jack, Queen Jack. So with him like blocking a lot of my give ups mostly means that I'm going to have more bluffs in my range. So again, that's why I would call more with King 9, Queen 9, Jack 9 and give up more with 9-8, 9-7, 9-6 because I'm bluffing a lot more with 8x, 7x, 6x blocks, 5x block, and giving up a lot more with the Jack, Queen, and King X block. So when he unblocks my bluffing range quite a bit, I'm going to be calling a lot more when I have a King, Queen, or Jack than I am with 8, 7, or 6 as my kicker. All right, on to the next one. Take a sip after all that beaking. Queen 9, pretty clear open here, I think. Going to be c-betting range on this board texture here, especially versus a short stack. These paired Broadway boards are going to be c-bet at a very high frequency. Jack on the turn is pretty interesting. Now, Villain can definitely have King X in this spot. He should not have a whole lot of Jack X here. I think a lot of the Jack X portion is supposed to be check raising here. So, yeah, that being said, I think checking here is probably good. If we were going to barrel this combo, I think I would prefer to barrel with diamonds and spades here, because essentially with the Queen 9 of clubs, we do block some hands that Villain's going into check all with that has backdoor club draws. Also, like, this Queen 9's kind of like an okay hand. Like, it doesn't have a ton of showdown value, but it has a little bit. Plus, it has equity on the river in case Villain's like check calling with like some sort of ace high. And then we obviously have equity versus, I guess not a whole lot of equity versus the king because there's 3 jacks out there. But yeah, I think I would specifically check here with clubs. And if we were going to barrel here, I'd do it with spades and diamonds. And then on the river, I think we just want to give up here. We have a lot worse hands that we want to end up bluffing with. I also don't know what Villain's like check calling flop with. And turn goes check check. Like, we're relatively capped on this turn once we check here. I think we're supposed to be barreling our King X quite a bit here. Definitely going to be barreling aces almost always. So when we check here, we're relatively capped. So I'm expecting like a lot of betting going on from Villain. So I do think once Villain checks, he probably has some sort of an ace high, or maybe he's strapping like quads here. Although again, I don't think he's supposed to be check calling a lot of Jack X anyway. That's not specifically King Jack. So yeah, I think Villain's going to have a lot of ace high here. But yeah, we can't just like bluff, even though we know we don't have the best hand here a lot. We can't just like bluff everything that's not beating ace high. So I think I'd much rather bluff like, you know, a 10-9 suited, a 8-7 suited, something like that, and then end up folding this one. We also block, like, he might be giving up like Queen 10 himself, Queen 9 himself. We block that portion of the range, which is why I would rather bluff like 8-7, 9-8, 10-8, stuff like that. And he actually gives up with a flush draw here, which I think is probably not great. Again, if he's not bluffing this hand, then what hand is he bluffing with? like he's gonna have a fair amount of king X here, which we're not gonna have when we check back. We also don't have aces very much when we check back. And again, if he's going to be giving up hands, I think like giving up with like ace high to show down is gonna be fine. Even queen high has a decent amount of showdown value, and then if he wants to bluff like 10-9, maybe a hand like I'm trying to think of backdoor clubs he might have in this spot. But yeah, if he's not bluffing this hand, he's essentially not bluffing anything. So I think we get pretty lucky with him giving up the 9 deuce of hearts here. Again, I think that's like kind of the misconception, like, oh, I have hearts. Hearts aren't a good hand to bluff, so I give up. But hearts, like if your only bluff here is basically flush draws and like essentially 10-9 in this spot, then if you're not bluffing flush draws in this spot, then you're not bluffing anything. So yeah, like again, I think the general conception is when you have hearts, they're bad bluff combos. But if flush draws are your only hands that you're bluffing with, then you have to bluff with hearts in this spot. So yeah, I think we get pretty lucky to not face any aggression there, because I think that hand definitely should be bluffing. Okay, ace king, next hand. And we face an all-in here for 7 bigs, obviously calling, lose to jacks. Ace queen next hand, and we face another short stack all-in. We got a call here for 8 bigs. And we lose another flip. How do we win this tournament? We're just losing flips. Block 2s, take it down. King, queen, pretty clear open here. I wouldn't mind opening here. I mean, betting here. For one, small blind's not going to be overcalling here with very much 6x. Button's not going to be finding a lot of 6x, so actually I think I probably have more 6x than anybody here. Now, like, button might get to flat some 7-6 suited, 6-5 suited. But outside of that, I think they're 3-betting a lot with like ace-6 suited, so I wouldn't mind betting here. But also, again, with this guy having me outchipped and ICM being really high, I want to be relatively passive when I'm out of position and having a stack that has me covered here. So I'm going to be checking a lot more in this spot, just with my overall range because of the scenario here. But for what it's worth, I don't think like stabbing here would be completely ridiculous. Pretty nice turn. It's kind of interesting here whether or not we want to better check. I think even button in this spot probably has ace queen in their range, because like playing for stacks for like 44 effective, cutoff versus button when ICM is really high doesn't seem like the best idea here. Yeah, I think we mainly want to bet here anyway, because again, I think once it checks through, outside of like ace queen, we probably have the best hand in this spot and not worrying about a lot of 6x from this guy. So yeah, I think betting here is probably best. We're not betting for a small size here. We might get to like split sizes here. Like if we bet too much bigger than this, it's just gonna get hard. Be hard to get called by worse. Again, like this guy can definitely have a jack here. This guy's gonna have a little bit of jack X here, but can check back some of it for sure. But if we bet too big here, it's gonna be really hard for us to get called by worse. We also block a lot of like king high flush draws that are gonna continue if we bet too big. So I think we might be able to split sizes here between like a small and the big size here. Essentially, we get to bet bigger with our really good draws and our 6x, and then we can bet smaller with our weaker draws and then hands like this. So yeah, I actually like blocking here. And then the river, it gets kind of interesting too. I think specifically with the spade, it's a little less tempting for us to end up like going for a quote-unquote trap in this spot, because we block some flushes or flush draws that our villain might end up bluffing with here. Maybe some like king 10s, king 9s that might bluff river here. But yeah, I think I like betting again. And we do bet for this half pot size and take it down. We also block like some king 10s, king 9s that might continue here too. So yeah, we end up betting. I don't think checking would be like too wild, but I think we mainly just want to be betting. And yeah, doing a lot of limping versus big blind here, who has us covered. We do get to do a little bit of raising, but when we do raise, our range is going to be relatively polarized. We're going to use a pretty big size here, so I don't think this is a hand class that wants to start raising here. I think like queen 8, queen 9 is probably where we want to start raising. And again, pretty good board for our villain's check back range here. I think, and again, I'm not going to be stabbing here quite as much as I normally would, because we're just really disincentivized to be stabbing really, really wide versus a player who has us covered. And again, I think if I was going to be betting here, I would prefer to have a heart in my hand than without it. Turn's kind of interesting here. I don't mind checking or betting. Again, I would have a preference for betting when I have the 6 of hearts and checking without it. So yeah, I wouldn't hate a stab here. I think checking would be completely reasonable too. We do stab, we end up rivering trips. And I think we can probably use a couple sizes here. Now, I don't know. This hand might be a little bit too strong to throw into the blocking range here. So I think I actually did end up blocking if I remember correctly. No, we ended up betting big here. Okay, I like this. So, yeah, I think we can go big here, basically trips plus, and then we can definitely still, like, if we ended up stabbing the turn with, like, 7x here, I think we can still end up blocking. And we do bet, and we get called by, wow, so pretty big cooler there, so he's got trips with the worst kicker. So pretty lucky for us there. Pocket aces. Again, pretty deep here, so we're not going to do any trapping this deep here. With aces, usually when ICM's like really high, we're not doing very much trapping with top of range anyway. So specifically with us being really deep and or deep stack and deep in the tournament, we're gonna do zero call with aces in this spot. Also, for what it's worth, I think we can actually size up in this spot here. I think maybe just subconsciously I ended up making it only 6 big blinds here instead of like 6.5 or 7, which might actually be correct. In these exact positions and these stack sizes, but yeah, all I see is we have aces. I want to give him a better price, so give him more room to like 4-bet fold. So yeah, we end up making this 6 big blinds here, and a pretty like interesting board here. Obviously like aces is relatively strong here, especially with the ace of hearts. But Billy can definitely have like ace jack suited here, which thankfully we block pretty well. I don't think he has jack 9, but he can certainly have king queen suited. Maybe some queen 10 suited, and then hands that have a lot of equity versus us, mainly like jack 10s, queen jacks, king jacks, stuff like that. But that being said, this is still a really good board for our range because we have pocket kings, pocket queens, probably full weight. At this stack depth, we probably do get to do some flat with pocket 10s. But yeah, we're gonna have ace jack off here too, so I still think we just do a lot of c betting here for a small size, and luckily we just take it down. Ace 3, I think this hand can either, like, it's probably low frequency open, but mostly limping here too. And then versus an ISO here, I think this hand can either limp call or limp 3-bet. Again, I think most of our limp 3-bets are going to come from our weaker ace X's. And we actually do go for the limp 3-bet. I think this size might be a tad on the small side. I'm honestly not sure. I think maybe we can go to like somewhere around 11. But this is like okay. It's not like insanely small, but we may have been able to go up an extra big blind. So we do get the limp 3-bet through. And pocket 6s versus 9.5. I don't think like we can be folding pairs here. Definitely not pocket 6s. That is a very loose jam for the stage of the tournament. So queen jack off for 9.5 bigs. That's probably quite a punt of a jam. I even think like queen jack suited probably has to find the muck in that spot. Now, I wouldn't hate the jam with queen jack suited because he does still have some fold equity. Again, with ICM being this high and me opening like relatively wide, he's gonna have fold equity in this exact scenario with 9.5 bigs. But I just don't think queen jack off is anywhere close to being strong enough to play for stacks with here. Ace king, get it through. King jack. I think this is actually kind of close for like 39 effective. I don't think I would do any call here with king jack. I think I would definitely fold king queen. King 10. But we do get it in there with king jack. This could be a little on the loose side. But again, as I was discussing yesterday when we were deep in the big 109, if I think a spot is close and maybe it might be mixing, then I'm going to take the aggressive route, especially when I have chips, because I want to apply pressure to people who might be a little bit tight in these exact scenarios, which I do think that's just like human nature. When the money gets bigger, people in general get a little bit more passive, a little bit tighter. So like to counter that, I like to be a little bit more aggressive in these scenarios and kind of like put people to the test. So even though this might be a little bit on the loose side, I know king queen gets in there, and if king jack does, even if it's not full weight, I'm going to take the aggressive route in these spots. I really try to put our opponents to a test here. So yeah, we end up taking it down here. So I could be convinced that could be a little too loose, but it's probably fine. So king queen, we get a call from the same recreational here. There's not supposed to be any calling in this spot. Again, a really dry board. Of course, we have trips in this spot here too. So specifically us being versus a recreational, I wouldn't mind like checking here. But this is a board we probably get to be like really aggressive on in general. The thing is, it's just kind of hard to figure out like what we want to be doing because I have no idea what kind of range this guy is flatting. He's probably just flatting like, way too wide of a range here. Obviously, there should be no flats in this spot. So with this being a board we usually get to be pretty aggressive on, and this guy's range maybe being a little bit too wide, I wouldn't mind just throwing out like a little 20% pot bet here. Maybe, again, I don't hate checking to let this guy just completely punt with too wide of a range here. So I don't hate either like making it like, a little over one big blind here or allowing our opponent to stab. And once he checks, I think we just want to start putting in money. I mean, small stab here, and he ends up just folding. Ace 3, gonna go for the open here in MP. And versus a button call, again, I'm not even sure button gets a lot of calls in this spot. Maybe gets a few with, like, again, some ace-jack suited, ace-10 suited, king-queen suited, stuff like that don't want to play for stacks in this spot. But yeah, not a lot of flats from him. So this range actually, like, even though I'm opening from a pretty strong position here, this flatting range is going to be relatively strong here. And on this board texture, I don't think I'm, like, too interested in barreling this hand. So I think I'm mostly just going to be checking here. Now we turn some showdown value. So I think we're just trying to get showdown here. And this is a pretty bad flat in this spot. So I'm going to assume we're at least final 3 tables. And I'm just going to show you guys, like, how far outside the realm is of, like, this guy flatting here off of 20. So, yeah, here's that 20 bigs. We open in relatively early position with a decent stack size. Maybe we'll just go from EP here. Opening a pretty similar range here. So this is button's range for 20 big blinds. So I said we wouldn't get a whole lot of flatting here, which we don't. Again, I said the ace-jack, ace-10 might get in there a little bit. The king-queen might get in there a little bit. But you also see the king-queens getting in there as a jam here. The king-jack, king-10s do a little bit of jamming. Queen-jacks do a little bit of jamming. So not a lot of flatting going on in this exact scenario in general, but a couple flats. But yeah, 8% of our range is either jamming or 3-betting for the all-in size, and only 1.5% is calling here. But you can see just how far outside of, like, the calling range he was. He called down here with 7-5 up. Like, we're supposed to be folding queen 10 suited in this exact scenario here. So yeah, just kind of a whale of a call in that spot. So that tells me a lot about this guy's capabilities in the spot and his general misunderstanding about the exact scenario here. So this is why I always say, guys, like, it's really important for you guys to study ICM if you are playing tournaments, because people are really butchering these spots and not adjusting their play for when we get deeper in tournaments. And this is just an absolute punt of a call. Again, I'm not really trying to harp on this particular player. There are a lot of players doing stuff like this, but this is why we go over stuff like this. This is stuff I may have even been doing before I had GTO Wizard and was able to study a lot of these ICM sims. Again, BBZ has a lot of these ICM sims that you guys can study as well. But again, specifically if you are a tournament player, make sure you're studying these ranges and not running into mistakes like this. Because, even though he wins the pot, it's just such a punt of a VPIP there for sure. What up, Shaheen? Yeah, we haven't been in the streaming streets here lately, and I've been promising this for long enough, so here we are. On to the next one, A7, definitely going to open here. And this is really interesting here. So we end up getting 3-bet by the big blind. We're definitely going to check this out. I ended up folding here, so obviously we spoiled that. I don't know what the answer is here, but how about you guys? What are you doing in this spot? We opened low jack with almost 43 big blinds, and chip leader of the table in the big blind ends up 3-betting about 4x to 8 big blinds here. What do you guys do with A7 here? What? So yeah, the majority of 3-bets here coming from the Ace-X block, a little bit from the King-X block here as well. A little from the Queen-X block, because again, we do have pocket queens as a value raise, but we see Ace-Queen off, pure calling in the big blind here, Ace-Queen suited, pure calling here. And then the majority of the 3-bets are coming from our weaker Ace-X's, essentially because these combos block the raise folds, and also we get villain to fold hands that dominate us when we end up 3-betting with this part of the block. So yeah, anyway, so the sim's gonna look a little bit different because we're 3 big blinds shorter in this exact sim than we are in our example, and also in this sim we're gonna be defending tighter because villain is putting in an extra 2 big blinds in our sim here as opposed to what we were facing in game. Anyway, our response here versus a big blind 3-bet. Actually defending down to ace-8 suited, which means in our exact example, we should be defending these hands pure, and maybe even ace-7 gets to get in there now that we're 3 big blinds deeper, and he's giving us a 2 big blind discount here. So actually, this might have been a call in this spot. This is definitely defending a little bit wider than I thought. Again, I thought like the ace-10, ace-jack, ace-queen would be pure VPIPs here. Also surprised to see like ace-queen suited, 4-bet jamming in this spot. I thought the same would pure call here. Ace-queen off, not even pure defending here in this spot. A little bit of 4-bet jam, but almost not at all. And I guess when he makes it 10 big blinds, we don't have a ton of room for 4-betting not all in. If we were a little bit deeper, I think 4-bet not all in would be somewhat reasonable. So yeah, no 4-bet all in in this exact example anyway. So yeah, 4-bet bluffs are coming from the ace-5 suited, ace-3 suited, get in there a little bit. King queen through king 10, pure calling here. Queens indifferent, jacks, 10s all indifferent here. So yeah, pretty interesting again. And we see that when we're in position, pure trapping with pocket aces here as well. We've seen this pretty consistently when we are in position and facing 3-bet. We are doing a lot of trapping here with pocket aces. So yeah, pretty interesting here. Let me catch up with chat, see if there's any questions I miss. Uh, every Broadway with offsuit Broadways. Oh, what do you mean about that, by the way? So you had a typo, but no, I don't have him covered here. He has me covered in this example. We're starting with 39 in this, and he has 42. Unless you mean the other one. I just want to show you guys what we do when we're both deeper stacked anyway. It's going to look a little bit different if we have him covered, but I wanted to show you guys an example of when stacks were just a little bit deeper. I think a lot of players don't find enough bluffs in this exact spot, so we probably defend a little tighter. Yes, I 100% agree with that. I do think that our opponents are nowhere near bluffing as much as they should be. Not to say that they're not bluffing from this portion, but I'm pretty sure the King 6 off is getting in there a third of the time. King 5 off 23% of the time. The King 4 off, 40% of the time. So as I do think that people will find this block for sure, they're probably missing this block and probably not 3-bet bluffing from this scenario as much as they should be. So yeah, that's actually a pretty good point too. One that I 100% agree with as well. People are not 3-betting as much, which means we can't defend quite as wide as well. All right, cool. We move on anyway. But yeah, for what it's worth, it is really close still. For the price that we're being given here, for sure. But again, I think in a spot where I do think it's close and it's being under 3-bet overall, if I do think the hand is close to a defend, I'm probably just going to fold if I don't think most opponents are finding the proper amount of 3-bet bluffs. But probably a little bit tight on my part too, I would say, because I think Ace 8, Ace 9 was also close too, and we can see even when he's using 10 big blinds in that spot, and when we're 3 big blinds shorter, they're still calling with those hands too. So, all right, on to the next one. We know what to do with queens, I think. All right, so yeah, another close one here. I think we have a couple different options we can do here. So we're 38 bigs effective here. We do have villain cover. This is cutoff button. Pocket queens. What are you guys doing here? You had flat jacks too? All right, we'll check this one out because obviously I do think this is kind of interesting. I mean, we'll see what we end up doing here first. So I actually go 12.5. I think, like I said, I think 13.5 would probably be a little bit better, but it's not like too far off here anyway. But we do go for the 4-bet not all in, and we end up taking it down. So yeah, again, we will check the spot out here. Again, we're about 38 effective, it looks like. And we had button covered. So 37. He has us covered here. 36. Oh, come on. Just give me one that's like relatively close. What do you have? 37 we said, right? No, 38, 39. So this one would be kind of close. What did we see? So 54 and 42. So we're only 3 big blinds off here. So we can see what we end up wanting to do in this spot. So we have him cut off. And he's 3-betting pure, like pocket 10s plus. Even pocket 9s getting in there a little bit more than I would. But yeah, so he 3-bets. And a little bit deeper here again. So they're going to 15 in this spot. Again, I had said 13.5 would be kind of good. So they're going a little bit bigger here too. I did say in game I would want to size up here a little bit. But we see queens is pure 4-betting for the not all in size. Jacks pure 4-betting. I thought jacks might do a little bit of mixing here. This deep, I guess we're not doing a whole lot of 4-bet jamming. We're doing a little bit here with like 9s, 8s, 7s. King, queen, king, jack, king 10 getting in there a little bit. Even ace, king off is 4-betting for the not all in size in this spot too. That might have something to do with us being like so wide. Usually we would see the non 4-bet size or non all in 4-bet size with the suited varieties here in case we get flatted. And then the offsuit ones just want to end up jamming. So yeah, I'm just going to see if we can find a bit of a closer example here where villain has us covered. We can maybe even do it the other way around where we're the one who's not covered here too. Or where he's the one that covers us. So 39, I'm about 40, 43 here. Let's try this one. So 2 to 6. And now, okay, so 2 big blinds less. You can see we dramatically like sized down here a little bit, down to 13.2, which is somewhere around where I said we wanted to do. And now in this example here, we're still like pure 4-betting, not all in with pocket queens. And then we did say like around where I was saying earlier, where I probably mixed between like 4-bet, not all in with jacks. Jacks mostly wants to be 4-bet jamming, but there's a little bit of 4-bet induced here. And then we have a little bit more 4-bet jamming overall. You can see just with like a 3 big blind difference, how much more we actually get to 4-bet jam. Basically 50-50 between 4-bet jamming and 4-betting not all in here. Again, ace king doing a lot more 4-bet jamming here. Ace queen off is now pure 4-bet jamming. The suited king X is doing a lot of 4-bet jamming. Queen jack, I definitely wouldn't have found this hand as a 4-bet jam. I would have been 4-bet jamming a little bit more with like the ace 5s, ace 4. These might make a little bit more sense as 4-bet not all ins. Because again, I think a lot of villains bluffs are going to come from the ace X block. So yeah, you see a lot of the bluffs coming from this ace X block, a little bit from the king X block here as well. So I guess with the ace X block, we end up blocking more of his bluffs here. So which is why we probably want to jam a little bit more with the suited kings here, because we unblock the bluffs with this portion of the range here, and we also get them to fold better hands than what we have here. So it's probably why we want to jam a little bit more with king, queen, king, jack, king, 10, queen, jack, and then non-all-in 4-bet with the ace-5 to end up folding to a 5-bet jam. So yeah, pretty interesting spot here. Less calling in ICM. Oh yeah, so that's another interesting thing that I want to bring up. Thank you for telling me that. So 30% of our range here, almost 31% of our range is 4-betting, and you can see only 7% of our range is calling here. So very few calls in this scenario, again, because we're very disincentivized to be calling in here with ICM. You can see queen, jack, queen 10, jack 10 are mixing folds here quite a bit here, and then which is pretty consistent with what I've seen from a lot of these sims. When there are very few calls in here, the calling range is pretty consistent. It's usually like ace jack suited, ace 10 suited, king queen suited. So this is still pretty consistent from what I've seen here. But yeah, the majority of our range is mainly playing 4-bet or fold, I would say here. So yeah, good point there as well. Mr. Wacka's bet. Mr. Wacka's bet. Mr. Wacka is back. What's going on, pal? Big blind has 3 bigs. Everyone ranges should be wider in PKO. This isn't PKO for what it's worth. And even if so, the PKOs are worth a little bit less at this stage of the tournament. So, yeah, this is not a PKO. And Big Blind has 9 big blinds in this example, not 3 blinds. Wondering, 30, do we jam more? I would imagine. We can check it out real quick. So 30, let's say Villain has us covered here. Or let's get to one where we're both like relatively close. This is 31-29. We have Villain covered by a little bit. So the 3-bet size is also going to be smaller because, you know, the stacks overall a little bit more smaller. But yeah, we're still going to have 4-bet non-all-in here. So from 2 to 5 to 11 bigs, we're going to have a non-all-in side. Because obviously Aces doesn't want to do any trapping here from out of position, which is, again, pretty consistent with what we've seen. We want to trap Aces when we're in position and pure fast play when we're out of position. But we definitely don't want to be 4-bet jamming 30 bigs here in this spot. We want to induce our opponent to either continue by calling or 5-bet jamming worse hands when we have Aces. So again, queens plus, pure 4-betting for the all-in size, even at 29 big blinds effective. Jack's a little bit indifferent here too. But yeah, basically pretty similar. Basically 50-50 between like 4-bet not all in to 4-bet jamming here too. So not a whole lot changes there. And yeah, so we go from 5 big blinds to 11 bigs here. So we definitely have room to 4-bet fold, which is definitely going to come from this portion of the ace-x block here as well. A little bit more jamming with the ace-5, ace-4 when we're a little bit shorter here. But yeah, still mostly being used. The suited ace-x block is still going to be used to a 4-bet fold here. These hands don't want to do a whole lot of calling in this scenario here. All right, cool. Let's move on. Really important spots to study, I think, especially when you get really deep. Where are we? No, we're MP. We get called from cutoff big blind. Again, a board I'm going to be checking pretty high frequency here overall. Ace is an interesting turn. Club becomes like kind of interesting as to whether or not we want to be bluffing this specific combo. But I think mainly I'm just going to be checking here. But the thing is, like, if we're going to be bluffing here, I guess we want to be bluffing a little bit of a maybe a range that has a little bit more equity here, because we are going up against 2 opponents and not just one. So we probably want to just have like more flush draws, and like outside of that, we just don't have any bluffs. So maybe we do get to use this like 1 club combos to end up bluffing here. I'm gonna assume I end up checking though. And then on the river, I guess kind of interesting here too. Now this guy can still possibly have an uncapped range here, but I think this guy's gonna be relatively capped. Like, let's say if he's flatting ace-4 suiteds, ace-9 suiteds, he might get to check those hands back sometimes. I don't think like ace-4, ace-9 should be like flatting a lot in this position anyway. But yeah, he's not gonna have a lot of ace-x here. This player's not gonna have that many strong hands in this spot, so there might be a chance we get to like block here on the river, because I don't think either of these players, once it checks around. Okay, let me get this straight. So once he checks on the turn, he's not going to have a whole lot of ace-x. This guy can still have ace-x on the turn, but once he checks on the river, I think he's probably going to bet a lot of his ace-x on the river. So once he checks again, I don't think there's going to be a lot of strong hands here. So there might be a chance where we get to bet a queen here on the river, just because I don't think our opponents really have a queen beat here too often. And I also don't expect this player to bet very often, I suppose, once we get to the river. So I would be completely opposed to like a block on the river. We do end up checking. We go up against King Jack and the ace-9 suit. Wow, he checked twice with ace-9 suited. That's pretty fucking wild. Now on the turn, I don't mind him checking here sometimes on the turn. Definitely not pure, but I think it's okay for him to be checking sometimes. But on the river, this is completely unacceptable. This hand needs to be betting on the river, specifically to put pressure on hands exactly like this. So yeah, this is I actually remember seeing this hand now in game and being very shocked to see this check back here. So you got to really think like I'm trapping a lot in the spot to be checking back a hand like ace-9 on the river, which I just don't think is true almost at all. I mean, essentially, once he checks back on the turn, I'm not expecting him to bet a lot on the river. So essentially, like, for one, I don't think he has a whole lot of ace-x, and I don't even think he's going to bet a lot of queen-x that river's here too. So I'm really disincentivized to be trapping here myself at all. So if I have a good hand, I'm just going to bet here a lot. So knowing that, he just should not be checking the spot almost at all, I think, with this hand. Even if he thinks I am trapping a lot here, it just doesn't make sense for me to trap in this exact spot. So I should basically be betting most of my value hands here in general, because I don't expect this guy to bet the river almost ever once he checks twice here. Outside of like sometimes trapping with like an ace on the turn, which is not going to be a very big portion of his range. So I'm just very disincentivized to be trapping here. So yeah, this should be a bet here all day. I'm well studied. I always find the king 5 suited jam. Would have bet 1/3. Yeah, I mean, I think he can make it anywhere from like, you know, half pot to even like 3/4 once he checks there on the turn, because his hand is so strong and he faces like checks on all 3 streets here. And like I'm essentially gonna have hands like again, I'm checking this board with almost my entire range, so I'm gonna have 8s through kings here essentially on the flop, and then a lot of those hands are gonna check here on the turn too. So by like checking the river, like he puts basically pocket 8s through pocket kings, king queens, queen jacks, queen 10s, all those hands basically don't have to face any aggression here essentially. So he never puts that part of my range in a tough spot. So this is pretty ridiculous here too. I can see his turn check, but I don't understand the river check. Yeah, like I said, I think his turn check at some frequency is definitely fine, but river check is pretty outrageous. This was on Pokerstars. This is the big 109 during W Coop, which is why it was so big on a Sunday. I can't remember the guarantee, but we did ship it for 24K, which means it's probably, I don't know, maybe it was like a 100K guarantee. I think that's what it was. All right, next hand. Jack 9, pretty clear open on the button here. So on this board texture, we're going to be, like, we're definitely not betting range on this board texture. And also, even though we have big blind covered here, we don't necessarily just want to be betting super high frequency, because he is relatively deep with us too. So we don't necessarily want to get into marginal spots here. So we're going to be checking this board at some frequency anyway. I think we might prefer to check here with clubs and bet more with diamonds and hearts, because with diamonds and hearts, we kind of benefit by getting immediate folds here. And then also we don't, like, if we check on the flop, we don't turn quite as well. So if I'm going to be checking a Jack 9 combo, it's probably going to be Jack 9 of clubs, because we keep some a hand that has like decent value in terms of rivers in our range, and also can like turn more equity with backdoor clubs here too. So I'm probably, if I had to guess, this is probably going to be the Jack 9 combo I check the most. And we do end up checking here. And facing a block here on the turn, I don't think we have any other choice other than to call. I think raising here would be way too thin. Villain can still have 2 pairs, straights, flushes using this size. So a better Jack X as well. So yeah, we're just going to call here and reevaluate. And then the river. I think we have, I mean, we're pretty high up in our range here. I don't think we can ever end up folding here. Yeah, the pot size bet kind of sucks. But if we end up folding this block, then literally what are we calling with? Flushes. I mean, we're probably going to be raising with like Jack 8 if that hand's checking on the flop, which I probably would at some frequency. So we just don't have any better hands than this. So outside of like pocket 3s with the spade that river's here. So yeah, I don't think this hand really gets to do any folding. And he's got the queen 10 with the spade, which I think is a pretty good bluff here, specifically with the queen of spades. So yeah, I like his bluff. Okay, ace king, next hand. We are 21 effective. So with him being relatively shallow, we're going to use a small 3-bet size here. Run 5 bigs. Yep, we do go for 5 bigs here. We take it down. Queen 10. Get move tables. So, okay, this is an interesting spot here. I think I know what I did, but I want to hear what you guys ended up doing in this spot. So hijack opens for 20 bigs, and we are in the big blind with 45 bigs. Queen 10 suited. What are you guys doing here? So anyway, I think I ended up jamming here. And we get called and lose, it looks like. So yeah, anyway, so this is again another spot that I've been working on, and I think this spot drastically varies between Chippy V and ICM. And the reason, like, one of the main points I look for at first is the 10x block usually wants to end up 3-bet jamming here quite a bit, besides like ace 10 suited, mainly because like if we end up jamming a hand like queen 10, jack 10, king 10, we get hands that dominate us to fold. We get king jack off to fold, probably get king queen off to fold. And like if we jam king 10, we get king jack, king queen to fold. If we jam jack 10, we get queen 10, king 10 to fold. So we get a lot of hands to fold that dominate us, essentially. And then when we get called, we're usually in okay shape here, too. So that's why I think I usually start with the 10x block. Even the 9x block might get in there a little bit for similar reasons. So, yeah, again, a spot that I've been working on and that I think people are, like, usually way too tight in. Now, I could definitely be wrong, but, yeah, I do want to check this out for sure. Because this is something that drastically differs from Chippy V to ICM. So, villain opened off about 20. This is a pretty close example of what we have here. So, hijack opens. Again, the range is going to be relatively tight here, 23%, but not insanely tight, again. Still opening quite a bit of the suited AX block here, which is pretty surprising. And I'll respond to the big blind. And, okay, so this is exactly what I was thinking that we see here. King 10, Queen 10, Jack 10, all these hands are getting in there. I thought some of the 9x block might get in there, which it does a little bit. The King 9, Queen 9 do. I thought there might be some traces of Jack 9, 10, 9, but it looks like those hands aren't getting in there too much. Also, part of the block I forgot to mention is that I would have expected A7 to pure call it here, and it's usually the Ace 5, Ace 4, Ace 3 block, Ace 2 block are getting in there a little bit. Now, I never know. It's always going to be hard to know exactly what this portion of the range is doing here, so I usually just roll here in general. Ace 5, Ace 4, I'm usually playing it pretty aggressively. Ace 3, Ace Deuce is always, like, hard to read as to what we want to do here. So, yeah, this is also a portion of our range that does a lot of jamming in this exact scenario here, too. So, yeah, the suited 10x block is going to be pretty consistent from what I've seen in a lot of these sims here. A little bit of suited 9x, and then weaker Ace X suited combos here. And then we still have some non-all-in 3-bets here, essentially with Pocket Jacks plus, Ace Queen suited, Ace King off, and even mostly 3-betting for the non-all-in side. Again, with 20 effective here, and the 3-bet side is going to be 6 bigs here, which we definitely have some fold equity, even making only 3x here. Then again, the weak Ace X block here is going to do a lot of 3-betting for the non-all-in side, some suited King X, Queen X here, but the majority of our bluffs are coming from the Ace X block here. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, here's the spot here, guys. So we're a little over 20 bigs effective. This is low jack versus button, and we're facing a 3-bet from the button. What are we doing here? Alright, so yeah, we'll check this one out. Again, I'm assuming we're final 3 tables here. This is definitely a big field here anyway, so it won't really make a difference. I don't know exactly when we're going to be at the final table. I think whenever we get to 9. So we're in the low jack with 20 big blinds here. I think like 8s and 7s are going to be really close to whether or not we actually open here or not. Let me just check out what the average stack is. Just so we're probably around like 20, 25 bigs average stack. Let's go back here. So this might be a little bit more accurate. Maybe this one right here, although that's not going to be okay because we need to have big blind having. Okay, so 19 and 25 here. This is going to be the perfect one. So literally our exact situation. So this is our opening range here. Looks like we are still opening 8s and 7s here. 6s even get in there a little bit too. Again, with final 3 tables, I thought this might be, we might end up folding a little bit of hands like this, but it looks like we're still okay. At least with the 20 big blind average. Stacks are a little bit deeper. We might end up folding a little bit more just because these won't get through quite as much. So we can see with 18 here, nope, still opening fine. So I'm just nit. All right, so we open here. Button 3 bets. Actually, they're using a smaller size in this exact example here. Only 3 betting to 4 big blinds in this spot. Where's my music? Hold on a second, guys. Try this again. So anyway, yeah, this is a 4 betting range here. 4 betting not all, or 3 betting range anyway. 3 betting the Ace 9, Ace 8, King 9s, Ace 4s getting in there a little bit. King Queen off, Ace Jack, Ace 10 off. All those hands are 3 betting to fold. What happened to my precious, precious music? So anyway, yeah, facing the 3-bet. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit of a different scenario because the 3-bet size, like we're just getting a better price overall, which means we're probably going to end up, calling a little bit more just because we're getting a better price. But I think still the majority of our range is going to be jamming over calling. So a lot of people said pocket 9s, some said pocket 10s. Pocket 9s is basically pure 4-bet jamming. We start getting a little bit indifferent with pocket 8s. Again, I think we can call a little bit more in this exact example because we're getting a 1 big blind discount in this example than we are in the other one. If this sim went to 5 big blinds instead of 4, I would imagine this call frequency is going to go down and this jamming frequency is going to go up. We're probably going to be folding a little bit more, again, because we're getting a worse price. So these hands that are mixing are just going to be like pure folds. Like the Jack 9s, the Ace Deuces, the Ace Deuces, the Ace Jacks, probably going to be pure folds versus a bigger size. But yeah, essentially, basically a pure 4-bet jamming, pocket 9s plus. Even pocket aces, 20 big blinds effective, is making it an all-in 4-bet size here to from 4 to 8, 8.5 big blinds here. So pretty interesting in this spot here too. So and also look how aggressively we're 4-bet jamming here with the low suited ace X block. Ace 5, ace 4, again, this is a block that's usually very high frequency, playing aggressively. The ace 3s, ace deuces, usually a little bit more passively, but they're still getting in there a little bit. Ace 8, ace 7 still getting in there. Just a tad. And you can see, again, the King X block is getting 4-bet here, 4-bet jammed quite a bit. And that's because most of the bluffs here from villain are coming from the ace X block. So when we have like King Queen, King Jack, King 10, we unblock our opponent's bluffs and also get them to fold hands that are better than us. So when we jam King Queen, King Jack, King 10, we're getting folds from all these hands up here that beat us, essentially. And then even when we get called by, like when we, like, let's say we 4-bet jam King Jack, when we get called by 10s, 9s, 8s, we're flipping. We get called by Ace Queen, we're basically a 3-2 dog, so not a bad spot. So we get a lot of worse hands to fold, or hands that are better than us fold, and even when we get called, we're doing okay here too. So yeah, pretty interesting spot. And Ace 9, I think, is probably like kind of close here versus 13 though. I do expect villain to be jamming worse hands here. Now I don't know if this is a call or not. So I think this is another actually pretty good spot for you guys to answer. Are you guys calling here with Ace 9 versus 13.5 bigs? And if so, what's the worst offsuit ace X you're calling here with? Okay, so yeah, another spot here. So the Ace 9, we ended up calling and lost to Ace Queen. Also kind of interesting here for 13.5, 14 bigs. I think this hand might just prefer opening in this spot. I'm not surprised to see this. Wouldn't be too surprised if this hand gets the jam, but let's check it out here anyway. So off of 13 bigs. I wish we didn't have so many chips here because maybe we had to call a little bit wider because we have more chips. But so yeah, cut off for 13. Again, this is a little bit less. So yeah, we're mixing here between jam and like raising all in here. So this is fine. Again, if I was going to be jamming here, it'd be more so with this portion of the range and be inducing with Ace King, Ace Queen here. Obviously, this suited block is going to be able to induce a little bit wider. So when villain jams here, we get to call down to Ace 8. So again, I think this is going to be close, and if I think Ace 8 is bottom of range, which I probably would have put myself at, I probably would have folded it, again, because I don't think that people are jamming wide enough when ICM is so valuable and you're getting so close to big paydays. So when I assume that my opponents aren't jamming as wide as they should be, I'm going to think, okay, what's the worst hand that I have? And if, like, I think Ace 8 is the worst hand that I have, I'm going to fold that hand and then start calling with Ace 9. Because, again, I think if my opponents are jamming too tight, then this hand that's essentially break even is now probably going to be losing versus too tight of a range. And also, I think that in most tournaments that I get myself into, and there are recreational players still remaining, I think I can find a better spot than to take a spot that is like barely making any money and very close to break even here. So yeah, I guess I'm still okay just seeing this, like calling with the Ace 9. Although again, I still think it's really close. Oh, and then, yeah, King Queen suited is going to get in there a little bit. Pocket 5s. Even 4s doing a little bit of calling here. But again, pocket 4s, you know, making 11 bigs for 100. King Queen, King Jack, or King Jack suited and pocket 4s making about the same amount of money. So pocket 4s, King Jack suited actually making more money than Ace 8 offsuit in this exact example here too. So, yeah, those are all pretty close. Again, when I see these spots where I think people are, like, not loose enough, and these spots are, like, barely making any money, you know, versus somebody that's playing as aggressively as a solver, I think we mainly just get rid of that portion of the range. Especially, again, if you think you have an advantage on the overall field, and there's a lot of recreationals, you don't really want to be taking thin spots. Like, you can just find better spots, essentially, to get your money in. So, yeah, but I think Ace 9 is still going to be pretty close here. And for what it's worth, if he's in the hijack here, I'm folding. So, yeah, that was a pretty big hit to our stack. So, 13.5 bigs, I think we can just jam here. I think we might still get to induce here with, like, some hands. I don't think Ace King off probably wants to. I think, like, Ace King suited and, like, Queens Jacks plus, I think we can probably induce. Ace king, nice hand to have with 6.5 bigs. Take it down versus king jack. 10-8 suited, best hand in poker. We actually end up going for the jam here. Wasn't sure about this one. Actually, this might not get in there. I'm going to check this one out here real quick anyway. Again, the suited 10x block might get in there. I think this is pretty close. So at 12 bigs, the stacks are a little bit short here. He had a few more chips. Let's get something a little bit closer to what we had. So 10 and 32. What do we have? 12, I said. 12 and a half. Oh, come on. Have something like decent here. He's probably going to be opening close to here. So this is 14. I think this will be like close enough. So button opens. Jamming range. Oh, so the 10-8 does get in there. Very nice, very nice, very nice. Okay. So again, I would have expected this portion of the block to get in there too. And now you see the king 9 and queen 9s were usually in there, but now it's the jack 9s, 10 9s getting in there. And the 8x block is getting in there as well. You can see we're basically not calling any offsuit ace x's here. We have a few suited ace x hands that end up calling here, but mostly even the suited ace x block is jamming here. I don't know if you guys are finding the king 4 suiteds here. Queen 6 suiteds, 10 7 suiteds. You guys finding that? I'm not. I can tell you that much. Pairs in there as well. Pure getting in there. Even some jack 10, 10 9 off. I'm definitely missing these for sure. And king queen, king jack. Shallow enough where we can jam and still probably get called by hands that we have dominated here, which is why these hands are jamming now instead of just calling. Yeah, we're aggressive with the shorter stacks for sure. Nice slacker. So 2 bigs here, 16 bigs, pretty clear jam. Ace 10 off, take it down. Ace queen off of almost 20. Raise, called. So again, I think this is a board we normally get to bet like pretty high frequency. I wouldn't mind checking back here. Again, we want to be, as a shorter stack, we don't want to be c-betting quite as ambitiously as we would be in like early stages of the tournament because these chips are so valuable, and we don't want to just be putting in chips like too wide in these spots. Now, obviously, like having a club is pretty good here because it's going to be easier for us to defend either a feeling like check calls or check raises, but I would definitely be mixing here. We end up going for the bet. Not sure what I think about like half pot here. I think it might be fine, but I think third pot's probably going to be the better size here. And then like 9 of clubs here on the turn. It gets pretty interesting because this hand is like gonna connect with big blinds check calling range here a fair amount. Like villain's gonna have like 9 6s, 9 5 suiteds. Jack 9 probably not so much. They're probably check raising a lot of top pairs, but they're gonna have some flush draws here. They're gonna have 6 7s, 8 5 suited, stuff like that. So yeah, this is like pretty close. I think like betting or checking are probably fine in this spot. We end up going for the small bet here, and we end up getting jammed on, and we just gotta fold at this point. Unfortunately, pocket kings. So we're down to 11 bigs here, and we go for the not all in open size here, which I think is fine. We're definitely gonna have like raise folds here with hands like ace 9 offsuit. Even a hand like king jack offsuit, I think is gonna want to raise fold in this spot here. Again, we don't want to be jamming quite as ambitiously. You know, with ICM being so high, even with like shorter stacks like this, but this also allows us to open with like open not all in with hands like aces, kings, queens as well. And we get jammed on, call of course, we beat 7s, pocket queens, next hand, and pretty clear decision here with only 24 bigs, and we beat 10s, very nice. So we go from 6.5 bigs to 50, just like that. And is this an FT? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I see here still. Wonder who was at this final table. So you see we're like halfway through, but I think the final table lasts quite a while. Yeah, we're probably going to call it for here, actually. I'm going to mark this hand here now because we're obviously going to finish this out. This also gives us like plenty of room to have a nice long stream after this. We got through about half the hands, I think. So yeah, I think we'll end up calling it here. Definitely want to do another one of these here too. You know, for what it's worth, for the last 2 weeks, I